All right, guys, we're going to talk about the new latest trend, which is the keto diet. And it's actually a new, sort of old trend. The way I see this is any of you who are familiar with the Atkins diet, I mean, the new keto approach is essentially taking the Atkins type approach and moving it a little bit further based on the science. Now, let's be clear. The keto diet has had a huge amount of beneficial research in recent years, over the last 5 to 10 years. And those of us who study nutrition have been very excited about some of the new understandings about being in ketosis. This is really important to understand, though, because if you look at the trends in nutrition, it becomes very clear that we get excited, very excited, and overemphasize anything new in nutrition, and we tend to underemphasize all the things that we already know. And so you can already see this trend happening. You've seen it happen with the low fat issue when we had sort of epidemiological studies showing that maybe fat was an issue, and we had lots of animal studies showing that you can give hamsters cardiovascular disease if you feed them high-fat diets. Then we got really excited about that and said everyone should stop eating fat. Of course, that everyone knows the history of that. That resulted in Snackwell cookies, high-carb diets, a lot of other types of things, and a explosion in obesity and diabetes and other things. And so then we went on this low sort of carb approach where we're like, oh my God, carbs are the worst thing. Because then we started to understand insulin kinetics and high blood sugar states and how high blood sugar was driving high triglycerides and inflammation, and how that was the thing that might be causing heart disease. And so we've made this jump back and forth into fat is good, then fat was bad, and then carbs are good, now carbs are bad. And now we're back to, oh my God, super low carb diets and very, very high fat diets are the best thing. And I would say not so fast. Let's not make the same mistakes that we have always made. It doesn't matter that your favorite blogger is putting out great information on keto diets. It doesn't matter that someone you respect who's an author put out good information on it. There is great information. There is good science, just like there was back then. The problem is we need context, we need time, we need the ability to actually figure this stuff out. What we do know is that being in ketosis can be very, very beneficial, and the research shows pretty clearly that for those with epilepsy, it looks like perhaps certain types of cancer, or cancer in general, may benefit from this. Certainly diabetes and morbid obesity certainly can benefit from being in ketosis, but there's so much we don't know. So what people have done is they've jumped on this bandwagon, and they've essentially said Alzheimer's is another one, by the way, that looks like it may be beneficial to be in a low glucose, low insulin, sort of higher ketone state. What we now know is that being in this state has its own beneficial metabolism. We know an awful lot about those benefits now. The problem is that the community at large in nutrition is already jumping on board and essentially making these leaping statements and using language such as that everyone should be on a keto diet. Now, there's a couple things you need to understand. Everyone is a little different in their ability to become, to generate ketones or to get into ketosis. And we call this going from a non-keto adapted state to a keto adapted state. In other words, there's some time between when you cut carbohydrates down and amplify, increase your fat content before you actually will get into ketosis. The amount of carbohydrate reduction, the amount of protein, because remember protein can be converted into glucose and keep you out of ketosis as well, and the amount of time that is required to happen is going to be different for every single one of us. So I think the research is pretty clear. Once you get into ketosis, you're certainly having a large amount of positive benefits. We don't really know what some of the negative benefits are. It doesn't seem like there's many right now compared to being in a very high carbohydrate, high insulin state. We know a lot about that. So we're still trying to figure out how long can we stay in these diets, how long can people stay keto adapted, and all of that kind of stuff. But here's the major issue for those of you who are overweight, just general people who are trying to understand nutrition. It takes the average person between 3 days at the fastest, but closer to 10 days at the fastest, up to 30 days to keto adapt. And this is a diet that is typically 50 grams or less of carbohydrate, or as low as 30 grams or less of carbohydrate, depending on the person. And of course, each person is going to have to manipulate their fat content. Some people can get there with higher protein diets, more like the Atkins diet. Some people will have to cut protein down a little bit more. So think about the extreme nature of this diet. That's what I want you to think about. For all of you who are like, oh my God, I need to do this. Think about how extreme that is for your average person. Are they really going to be living off egg yolks and cream and avocado and basically not do anything else? How many people are actually going to be able to do that? And the fact of the matter is they have to do that for 10 to 30 days before they even start feeling better. In other words, what we do know is we know that protein is the most satiating macronutrient. Fat, not so much. Once you become in ketosis, once you start producing enough ketones, those ketone bodies seem to have some hunger suppressing effects. But during that time where you're cutting carbs down, before you keto adapt, you're going to be in this situation where you can have excessive cravings, excessive hunger, and it's going to be very, very difficult to stay on this diet. And this is actually what I have seen clinically, which is why I've largely abandoned, and many of us did back when the Atkins diet first became favorable, or we were all excited about. And by the way, the new keto diet's what we know, it's slightly different. The Atkins diet was a slightly higher protein diet. The new keto diets are slightly lower in protein, or I should say moderate in protein. But the fact remains, this is almost impossible for the vast majority of people that I've worked with to maintain for 10 to 30 days before they keto adapt. And then of course we live in a culture where sugar is everywhere, sweets are everywhere. We tend to have, we have football, we have all these things where carbohydrates are ubiquitous. It is very easy to push yourself out of ketosis. And so most people, this is not going to be a viable solution for them, in my opinion. Now, of course, that opinion might change with time, with new research, and with other sort of pieces of information that we can use to make this situation better, to maybe perhaps get people to keto adapt faster. But what I would caution people is that don't get overly excited and overly enamored with these newfangled things. So, okay, the keto diet is something that may be beneficial. Let's wait, let's see. If you're someone who's very fit, someone who is used to playing detective, certainly use it, see how you do with it. But if you're someone who's just getting started with nutrition, this is probably the exact wrong approach to go, in my personal opinion. Now, other experts will argue, read those things, educate yourself, see what you think, but I'll tell you this. To me, your best approach is going to be to eat in a way that keeps hunger down, that keeps cravings at bay, that keeps energy stable. And for most people, that is going to be a diet that is high in protein, fiber, and water, and has just enough, but not too much, fat, sugar, salt, alcohol. In other words, we need a satiating diet, one that suppresses hunger, and we need a satisfying diet, one that acknowledges our personal preferences and our unique psychologies around food. And so what we all should be trying to do is, instead of jumping on the new keto diet, what we should be doing is saying, what about that makes sense to me? Let me play detective with it. Maybe I'll take some useful information from that. Maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. But I need to find a diet that keeps my heck in check. Hunger, energy, cravings, balanced, stable. Hunger low, energy balanced and stable, cravings low. And that might be a slightly higher carbohydrate diet for you as an individual. It might be a very high fat, low carb, moderate protein diet like a keto diet for other individuals. And we have to honor that. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach for all people. It's not the keto diet. It wasn't the low-carb diet back then. It wasn't the low-fat diet back then. So what we need to understand is, let's stop being on these bandwagons. Does the keto diet have some promise? Certainly. Is it something you might be able to use to benefit from? Certainly. Is it the cure-all and the thing that everyone should be doing? Probably not. My opinion is it definitely is not, and that's my guess that, again, we'll be in this situation in a few more years where the next thing will come along, and we need to get people to stop jumping on these bandwagons. Create the diet that works for you. That would be my advice as it pertains to the keto diet. Hope that's helpful for you guys.